Have you ever wondered what time it is? Of course you have. We check our phones, our smartwatches, our computers. Time is everywhere, measured down to the millisecond. But have you ever stopped to think about where it all began? What did the very first clock look like? Well, get ready for a surprise, because it looked nothing like what you'd expect. And the most shocking part? It only had one hand. That's right, just one. How on earth could anyone tell time with that? Stick with me, and we'll unravel the fascinating story of the first clocks and discover why one hand was all they needed. If you love stories like this that make you see the world differently, hit that subscribe button right now so you don't miss our next deep dive. Our story doesn't start with gears and springs, but with something much more fundamental: the sun, the water, and the stars. For thousands of years, humanity told time by observing nature. Sundials tracked the sun's shadow, water clocks, or the clepsydras, measured time by the steady drip of water, and hourglasses used sand. These were clever, but they had big problems. Sundials were useless at night or on a cloudy day. Water clocks would freeze in the winter. They were all approximations, good for dividing the day into chunks, but not for precise, consistent minutes. As society grew more complex, especially in medieval Europe, this wasn't good enough. The real push for a better clock came from an unlikely place: monasteries. Monks needed to adhere to a strict schedule of 7 daily prayers, from matins before sunrise to compline after sunset. Missing a prayer time was a serious issue. They needed a reliable alarm, a machine that could ring a bell to call them to prayer, day or night, rain or shine. This need gave birth to the first mechanical clocks in the late 13th and early 14th centuries. These weren't dainty little things you'd put on a mantelpiece. They were colossal, room-sized iron machines, often housed in the bell towers of cathedrals and town halls. Think massive iron frames, heavy weights, and a complex series of gears. They were the supercomputers of their day. These early clocks, like the one in Salisbury Cathedral in England, which dates back to 1386 and is one of the oldest working clocks in the world, had one primary job: to strike a bell on the hour. The word clock actually comes from the Latin word clocca, meaning bell. Their purpose wasn't to show you the time, but to tell you the time, audibly. And that brings us to the big question: why only one hand? The answer is beautifully simple. Life was slower. The concept of a minute, let alone a second, was not part of everyday life for the average person. People's days were governed by the sun and the seasons, not a ticking clock. For them, knowing the approximate time between the hourly bells was more than enough. So, these first clock faces, when they had them at all, featured a single, long hand that pointed to the hours. The dial was typically marked with 12 or 24 hours, often with subdivisions for quarter hours. You could glance up at the tower and see, it's about halfway past 2. And that was perfectly sufficient. No one was in a rush to catch a train that left at 2:37. The idea of being 5 minutes late didn't exist because the minute, as a common unit of time, hadn't really caught on yet. The single hand represented the hour, and it slowly swept around the dial, once every 12 or 24 hours. People in the town square could look up and get a general sense of the day's progress. It was a public service, a shared rhythm for the community, anchored by the hourly chime of the bell. So when did the minute hand make its grand entrance? Well, it wasn't a sudden revolution. It was a gradual evolution driven by science and technology. The key invention was the pendulum, developed by the brilliant Dutch scientist Christiaan Huygens in 1656. The pendulum allowed for a level of accuracy that was previously unimaginable. Before the pendulum, clocks might lose or gain 15 to 30 minutes a day. Suddenly, with Huygens' innovation, they were accurate to within a minute, and later, just a few seconds per day. This incredible new accuracy made it possible, and meaningful, to measure smaller units of time. With a clock that was precise enough to track minutes accurately, it finally made sense to add a second hand to display them. The minute hand began appearing on clocks in the latter half of the 17th century. It was a game changer. It represented a fundamental shift in how humanity perceived and interacted with time. The world started to speed up. The addition of the minute hand coincided with the scientific revolution and the Age of Enlightenment. Scientists needed precise timekeeping for their experiments. Navigators needed it to determine longitude at sea. And as the Industrial Revolution dawned, factory owners needed it to synchronize the workforce. The clock was no longer just a bell ringer for monks. It was becoming the engine of modern life. The minute hand divided the hour into 60 smaller, manageable pieces. It allowed for schedules, appointments, and deadlines with a newfound precision. It fundamentally changed our relationship with work, travel, and social life. The single-handed clock represented a world where time was fluid and approximate. The two-handed clock heralded a new era where time was a commodity to be measured, managed, and optimized. And what about the second hand? That came even later, becoming common only in the 18th and 19th centuries as clockmaking technology became even more refined. It was the final step in slicing time into the tiny, digestible units we know today. So, the next time you glance at your watch and see those three hands sweeping around, take a moment to appreciate the journey. It started with a single, slow-moving hand on a giant iron machine in a church tower. A machine built not to show the time, but to ring a bell. A clock for a world that moved at a different pace, where around noon was all the precision anyone needed. The story of the clock is the story of our own relationship with time, from the slow, cyclical rhythms of the ancient world to the fast-paced, split-second precision of today. It reminds us that our obsession with minutes and seconds is actually a pretty recent development in the grand scheme of human history. It's a fascinating thought, isn't it? Our world is full of incredible stories like this, hidden in the objects we see every day. What other invention or piece of history are you curious about? Let me know in the comments below. Your suggestion might just become our next video. Thanks so much for watching and spending your time with me today. If you enjoyed this journey back in time, please give this video a thumbs up and make sure you're subscribed with notifications turned on. We have so many more stories to uncover together. Until next time, stay curious.